much?
Yeah.
I got a new band for Christmas. It's the last week of October. No. And if you look online, they give you a little paper cutout, put all the way around you, and you measure your wrist to like a quarter of an inch tall. And then you order it by one exactly to fit you. So that if I can slap it on.
Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting this evening, January 8th, 2024. Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. All right, first item on the agenda is to approve the Planning Commission agenda for the evening. Do I have any requests for changes to the agenda? Seeing none, entertaining a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right, agenda's approved. Moving on, we have the minutes from the meeting held Monday, December 11th, 2023. Any concerns about the minutes or requests for edits? Seeing none, entertaining a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second to approve the minutes as submitted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Moving on this evening, it looks like we have one public hearing. This is a request for a planned unit development concept review on 9.08 acres, planned unit development district review on 9.08 acres, site plan review on 9.08 acres. Will the proponent of the project please come forward? Good evening. Welcome. If you could state your name for the record and tell us about your request, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Brady Busselman. I am a civil engineer with Sambatech. I am here with Ben Schultes, who is representing Jerry's Enterprises, the CFO, who is the property owner and applicant. Also with me tonight is Kendrick Booth with Wilkes, the architect. We do have a PowerPoint that I'll just dive right into and try to give you a little background. Do my best to keep it brief, and then happy to stand for questions once we get through.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. So as you noted, the application is on a 9-acre property. However, the site itself is significantly smaller. That is under consideration tonight is a infill site for a Chipotle restaurant on an underutilized portion of the parking lot at the Preserve Village Shopping Mall. So located in the southwest quadrant of Anderson Lakes Parkway and Highway 169. I've highlighted the site on the current slide. It's in the northeastern area of the site. If you're familiar with it, there are 3 driveways. This is just north of the center driveway. You could view it as mirroring the Starbucks project that went in a similar fashion 5 or 6 years ago. We can go ahead and go to the next slide, unless I have the clicker.
I'll grab those.
All right, but there we go. So here's a little bit more zoomed in overlay of the proposed site on top of the existing aerial. So this would result in a net decrease of approximately 38 parking stalls. We are, thank you, taking away about, I want to say 52 and adding 16, or 54 and 16, somewhere on that order. So about a year ago, before we even started on design or before Jerry's entered into a contract with Chipotle, they hired us to work with a traffic consultant to perform a parking study on this site. Obviously, as a longtime owner, future owner, past owner, current owner, et cetera, they want to make sure that this does not impact their existing businesses and tenants in a negative way. So the parking study was completed at the end of 2022, actually over a year ago. And the timing worked out great for us because the peak use for, or the peak parking period for a use like this, retail, is over the holiday season. So they were able to go out there and do parking counts around the week of Christmas 2022. What they found during that week was the peak, and I forget how many dates they counted. It might have been 5 or more. I can look it up if that's relevant. But the peak usage was on December 20th, and that was about 50% of the stalls being utilized during that time. The parking study further went on to evaluate with the net reduction in 38 stalls and the addition of this building, which is around 2,300 square feet, about 35 interior seats, 16 seasonal exterior. The peak utilization would go to around 70% of parking stalls, so about 30% would be available. And that's key. The rule of thumb for the industry is about 15% that you want to have available for maneuvering and for the appearance of available stalls. So we're in good shape for this. One other item to highlight on this, you'll see the sidewalk connection. So Jerry's is proposing, similar to the one to the south from the Starbucks building, there would be a concrete paved sidewalk, different color that's differentiating for pedestrian movements from the main building to the future Chipotle. And might be operator error, thank you. So a zoomed in view of the site plan. Couple things to add here. So you'll see two what we'll call drive-through lanes. The interior lane is the Chipotle lane, which is their online order pickup. I'll get into more details on that later in the presentation. The one exterior to that is a bypass lane that's not used for ordering, stacking, anything but allowing people to bail out of the Chipotle lane or to circulate around that side of the building. The hatched area just to the northwest of the building is the trash enclosure. So it'll be of similar materials as the restaurant itself. And next slide, thank you. Grading plan, not a lot to, although I'm an engineer, I could spend a lot of time on this, not a lot to add, except that we're mimicking existing drainage patterns, putting the building down toward the low end of the site. Water will continue to drain from the west to the east into the existing stormwater infrastructure. There's a rectangle with multiple horizontal lines south of the building you'll see there. That's the subsurface stormwater treatment system. So interesting little tidbit here. This actually on its own results in a net decrease in impervious. So right off the bat, we're improving water quality. By the addition of that subsurface system, then we're meeting Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek watershed treatment requirements for both volume and water quality. In fact, they approved this at their board meeting in December, so we've checked that box. Good enough for that. Landscaping plan, effectively continuing the theme of what was done with Starbucks, maintaining the continuity of the commercial site. We are replacing 3 trees that will be taken out, small trees in the parking lot. Point to note that those trees are not going to be placed on the east side of the building to avoid interfering with the view triangle of cars exiting that center entrance to the site south of the building. Elevations, as I mentioned, I do have Kendrick here with Wilkes. I'll say briefly that this has been refined from Chipotle's typical brand colors to more closely match the theme of the other buildings at Preserve Village Mall. The glass areas are pointed inward, kind of focused on the interior where the customers will be entering the building, and then there's some brick articulation and other methods of creating interest on the east and north side where the back of house is located in the building. And if there are any questions on that, I will turn anything else over to the architect. Likewise, floor plan, I'll briefly just note again, there are 35 seats interior, and those are kind of aligned with where the windows are, so the south and the west side, 16 seasonal seats out exterior, and then over half of the building in this operation is back of house. So Chipotle, this was somewhat new to me, so I assume maybe new to some of you as well. So this is an online order only. There's no speaker box, there's no order board. If you pull up, you'll have to wait until you get to the window, at which point they'll tell you to go park and go into the building, or to order online and then get back in queue. The way this works is that you'll go through and select all your features. If you're familiar with Chipotle, you can spend quite a bit of time getting that all set up. And then you select a 15-minute window to pick up your order. They'll cap the number of orders in any 15-minute window to 10. So you cannot have more than 40 people coming to pick up within an hour, 10 people every 15 minutes. So these are some stats provided by Chipotle. Average Chipotle customers, somewhere around 140 per day. Average for the peak hour is 25. So the peak hour is 11:30 to 1:30, lunch 5:30 to 7:30, dinner. So it's capped at 40. Their average peak is 25. So we've got, there's typically some room in there. They note that their average service time, and this applies to the next thing we're going to talk about, is only around 2.5 minutes. Comparatively, average other fast food lane service times are over 6 minutes. You're less than half with the selecting a window, the online order, everything's a well-oiled machine, which leads to an average of 2 customers queued at the pickup window at any given time on average. 4 cars are, sorry, let me rephrase that. It will reach 4 cars, but 98% of the time it won't exceed 4 cars, and then if it exceeds 4 cars queued up, that's only for 15 minutes per day on average. We've got room for 6 cars to queue up in the Chipotle lane without impacting parking, without utilizing the bypass lane. So very confident that we have a good design that can accommodate the anticipated customers. And then the last slide, the blue notes are the ones I wanted to focus on. So continuing with the Chipotle theme, the burrito loading zone is a parking stall in front of the building that's dedicated to the Chipotle orders. If you do not want to go through the drive-thru, if you want to pull up, run in, and pick it up by yourself versus going through the drive-thru, you have that option. And then there are 2 pull-ahead parking stalls to the south of there. So if you were to order, queue up, get to the window, and your order's not ready, they'll send you around to wait in one of those 2 stalls. And with that, I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. Happy to answer questions or turn it over to staff, whichever you prefer.
Thank you. Any initial questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremy, would take us through the city report, please?
Yes. As the applicant had noted, we are requesting a PUD concept review and a PUD district review, but no waivers on this situation. Maybe a little bit unique, but the reason why we're looking at it from a PUD perspective is there's already one on site, and so we're amending the original approval because of parking, and I'll get to parking in a moment. Excuse me. Usually the issues we're looking for on an infill site development are, is there enough parking? Does the building match, or is it consistent or communicate the overall kind of theme of the site? And then landscaping and other impact to the adjacent residential areas. Landscaping, it's north, the project is in the northeast corner of the site, so it's really not going to impact Eden Prairie residents. It's shielded by the existing shopping center. So from a noise or odor situation, we don't anticipate any impacts there. In terms of building materials, the applicant did note that this is different than the standard kind of color scheme that Chipotle uses. They're using a color scheme that is more consistent with what's already been established at the shopping center. We work closely with them through this review process to kind of get that to kind of communicate between the 3 buildings on site. So we're happy with what the result is in terms of a building that meets all the design requirements in terms of building material percentages, and also the colors are consistent and generally with what's there. The parking, as noted by the applicant, was one of our early concerns. As you know, you're taking away existing parking that serves the shopping center, and then you're adding additional requirement on top of that, there's a breaking point at some point. We did require a parking study, which was done. Engineering staff went out and verified that parking study, just the observations made during that review, and Carter can speak to that more in a moment. But we did look very carefully at the parking requirements and cautiously, because there's not a lot of opportunity for overflow. There's obviously no parking on Hennepintown Road, and the curvy nature of that road, we didn't want to have any backups or anything like that. So we did look at that very cautiously. You may recall last summer, a code amendment was put forward, not based on this project, but this project happens to benefit from it, in terms of we can reduce the parking requirements by code up to 20% if certain standards are met. And the idea at the time was for shared parking or shopping center type situations where there's multiple users, multiple owners, and there's an opportunity to kind of share the parking between the uses and between the demands of those. We anticipated multiple owners in this situation. This is a single owner, owns the shopping center, so the management of that will be a bit easier in terms of one property owner is responsible for all the parking. But that code amendment that I spoke of identified really 4 kind of areas that we could reduce that requirement up to 20%. Shared between 2 or more comprehensive or complementary uses. There's a shared parking plan. The applicant can demonstrate that there's no substantial conflict between the peak parking demands between the uses on the site, and then there's a cross-access and parking agreement. And the information provided as part of that traffic study, along with our analysis, we're confident that those 4 standards are met. So that, in effect, reduced the code requirement of parking from 420, I forget my numbers here, excuse me, from about 410, which is the minimum required by code, reduce that down from that to 328 parking spaces. They're providing 341 spaces on site, so it's above the 20% reduction allowed by code. This is less than the 378 required by the PUD agreement when the Starbucks project came through. So that's why there's no waiver necessary. So that 341 is the number that they're proposed. The parking study supports that number of parking spaces based on, the uses on site and the expectation of inefficiencies due to snow storage or a perception that the parking lot is too full. So we're confident that the parking does satisfy the requirements and will succeed for the shopping center. We did look at that very, very carefully. So based on the parking requirements, building materials, landscaping, the applicant mentioned the pedestrian connection. That's consistent with what we required at the Starbucks project, because we are sharing parking. It's expected that pedestrians are going to move from one use to the other. We want to provide a safe haven for that. This project does provide those goals. Excuse me. And staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Thank you. Questions for the city, or would anyone like to hear more about the parking from the city? Okay. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and speak for or against this request, please come forward now. Seeing none, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Motion to close from Commissioner Grote. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Weber. All those in favor of closing public hearing say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing's closed. Further discussion?
Mr. Governor,
Commissioner
I have a
Taylor.
question, yes. One of the things I didn't hear during the presentation was what's the normal operating hours of the?
Yeah, so the normal operating hours.
Could you come, just so you could hear it online, please? And if you'd state your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Kendrick Booth. I'm with Wilkes Architects. Normal operating hours for Chipotle range from 10:30 to 8 p.m., I believe.
All right, thank you. Second question is around the pedestrian walkway. I see that it's going to be kind of in the middle of the parking lot for pedestrians to walk back and forth. I was out there today and didn't really see the walkway for the Starbucks, but what type of safety measures are being put in place to safeguard pedestrians that's going to be walking in between the parking lot where there's vehicles moving back and forth, parking and so on?
So it's an interesting question because the differentiation in pavement itself is an improvement over the typical parking lot environment. So the fact that you have that visible and tactile difference in pavement is the primary safety factor for cars. So I was out there as well during the neighborhood meeting and drove down that lane, and instinctively I saw that. And even though no one was on it, my first reaction was to not drive on it because I could tell that that was a sidewalk. So that, I guess, is the long and short of the answer on the safety mechanism.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor, Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioners, this is a similar kind of treatment that we have for the Lunds Byerly's near City Hall here, where it's a stained concrete pathway from Culver's to the Lunds Byerly's, and it is as he said, a tactile feeling, and you can observe that. It's not just a painted line.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions, comments? Yeah, Commissioner
Just
Sibley.
real quick, I had another landlord, similar size space with multiple buildings, and in their unit they had urban air where there were young children crossing, and cars are just driving by. They're trying to get to the park to their vehicles, and one of the things the landlord did was he had a solar-powered flashing stop sign right by there. Although it's not required to stop, I think more vehicles can see that, especially if it's next to where pedestrians are crossing. So it's just something I throw out there in case, if that would help.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion on this? If there's no further discussion.
Look, I'll make a comment initially. In general, I think this looks to be a very workable plan, desirable for the community. Jerry's has done a good job. Just a personal comment, I park in that row at Lunds and Byerly's when we go there, and the visual differentiation is clear. I mean, I think it does help to have that clear visual, and there it's a reddish concrete, and everybody sees it, so it does work. But in general, I just like to speak to my support of this project and believe it's will be a good addition to the community. Sounds good. And I'll also be happy to make a motion. Move to recommend approval of the PUD concept review, PUD district review, and site plan review, all on 9.08 acres, as represented in the January 8th, 2024 staff report, and based on plans listed in the January 8th, 2024 staff report.
I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Kirk. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sherwood, seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we recommend moving forward. Thank you. Nice presentation, great project.
Thank you, good luck.
Moving on this evening, do we have any planners reports, Mr. Marner?
None tonight.
All right, any members reports?
I would just like to, I'm not as deeply in this industry as many members here. But about, I think it was a week or two ago, there was an article in the Star Tribune about a number of cities, not necessarily suburban communities, but cities who are doing away with all parking requirements. Just doing away with it and allowing the developer to propose what they thought was right. And I just found that to be interesting. Not going to speak one way or the other on it, but it surprised me, you know, based on our discussions and some of the I don't want to say issues that we've had, but some of the potential things that have gone on, and a number of, you know, fairly large cities in Minnesota were just doing away with parking requirements. So might be interesting to look up that article if you haven't seen it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Commissioner Kirk. All right. No other reports. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Vote on the adjournment.